Welcome to the Time Management Podcast with me, your host, Abigail Barnes. I'm a productivity coach, global speaker, time management author, and award-winning entrepreneur on a mission to share the 888 formula with the world and to remind you that it's your time. Leave it to me to bring you new time management tips, tricks, tools, and strategies, to introduce you to guests, research, and case studies from around the world, and to give you a simple 5-step process you can follow to uplevel your productivity, achieve your goals, and create a life that exceeds your wildest dreams. I'm so excited that you're here, so let's get started. Welcome to the show. Today, I am so excited to be joined by the amazing Marcus Ramtohul. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's just dive straight in. Who is Marcus in a nutshell?
That's always a very difficult question, Abigail. I'm an actor, musician, model and presenter. I podcast as well, but I'm also a certified getting things done trainer in the productivity space and in the personal development space as well, and also a coach and a father and a husband and a citizen of the planet.
So many incredible things. I am really, really excited to see where this conversation is going to take us. And I have a feeling that this may end up being a two-parter because you are a veritable treasure trove of life experience, journeys, and stories to tell. What was your relationship like with time in the early years?
I must admit, not a very good one. I think I've still got this energy about me that I like to do things that I enjoy. I like to do things that are fun. And if I think back to school, I didn't much enjoy school. Now, on the flip side of that, I was really good at it. That the system, the way it was set up, and probably more or less still is, I found it fairly easy. So I tended to kind of coast, but still do quite well by trying to do the very least. And what that ended up meaning was, for a long time, I would just be like, okay, this essay is due in a week's time. That means I can do absolutely nothing until the day before and just cram in all-nighters. And I don't know, maybe some of the listeners are similar age. There was that rhythm of you get home, turn on the computer, the 56K dial-up, and it would kind of start to crank forward. You go, right, I'm going to work on this English essay. And then in the side, I'll just put MSN Messenger on. And you'd probably spend forever on MSN Messenger messaging your friends being like, oh my gosh, this essay, yeah. And I remember that depressing feeling of everybody just slowly disappearing from MSN Messenger as they'd finally finished the essay. And I was still there because I'd gone down a few different rabbit holes and I'd been chatting to people and downloading songs. And yeah, so it wasn't a good relationship. I must admit, I always managed to get the work finished eventually and get it in on time. But yeah, not fantastic.
I love this. You are really making me laugh because I can just see you doing this, but I can also see myself and the listeners doing this as well. Talk us through what happened next. You are good at academia, but it's not challenging you. What was your next step?
I had this moment of, before my exams, there was this big kind of cram during that kind of GCSE period before the exams. We had the big periods of study leave, which I spent most of it either in the park playing football or at home on the computer playing Championship Manager. And I really didn't do much at all. I had occasional bursts of enthusiasm and maybe look over something and go, oh yeah, I should look at that. And I remember every exam that I took, if it was an afternoon exam, people would be getting to school early, let's go to the library, let's do some group revision. And I'd go to the park and play football with my mates, and I'd turn up kind of sweaty and disheveled, like, I better go do this exam. And it was literally as you walked into the sports hall, I was like, what have I done? Oh my God, this was terrible. What have I been doing for the last couple of years? Like, this better go okay. And that was what I was aiming for, just kind of don't fail. And I remember getting my results and I honestly thought they were someone else's results. They were really good. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, wow. And that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, actually, if this is easy for you, maybe you should be doing something with your life and for other people. And that started me down this journey of wanting to become a doctor, of wanting to study medicine, which a lot of my teachers and peers and elders were like, you don't have the discipline for this. I appreciate that you're smart and you find it easy, but that's another world, and you've really got to start doing some work, which in my young, arrogant way, I took with a pinch of salt. So I chose A-levels to study medicine, and being a bit of a dreamer, I suppose, and I still am, it wasn't enough to want to be a doctor. I still wanted to do the fun things that I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to travel more than anything. Travel's a big part of my life. I wanted to have a job that was different and exciting. So I simultaneously applied for a scholarship with the Royal Navy, which was part practical and part just I wanted to do loads of cool things. And that seemed like the way to be able to do it, to have a cool job, to travel the world, to do things that other people don't get to do. So the way that it worked was basically they were going to pay for me to study, and then I'd go straight into a 6-year contract working with the Royal Navy, all hinging on me actually getting into university. And that's where best laid plans kind of fell apart, because I took the A-levels, history, biology, chemistry, physics, sciences, to try and get into medical school. I got my results 2 years later, and I got a B in biology that was 2 marks off of an A. And I had a really good interviews at a couple of places. St Andrews was where I really wanted to go. I had a great interview there. And I phoned them up and I said, I've not got the grades. What do I do? And they said to me, you did a really good interview. You're really strong. It's just 2 marks. Can you get it remarked? Which I didn't even know was a thing. So the school were really supportive, and we sent it off for remarking, which took a while. It came back and I was still 2 marks off of the A. So I didn't get into medical school. I didn't get my scholarship. All my friends went off to university, and I was suddenly just left in a place I'd never been before. Very young, for the first time in my life, pretty much, I'd failed. And I was like, oh, what do I do now?
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. What did you do next? What were the hurdles that you had to overcome?
What it forced me to do very early on, which I'm really, really grateful for, I'm a big believer in trying things, making mistakes, learning from them constantly. And that was, like I say, the first big mistake, the big hurdle. And I suddenly had to think about I read about this a lot now, but I had to discover it for myself. Why? Well, why did I want to become a doctor? Why did I want to join the Navy? Why did I want to do all these things? And it comes back to those things of, well, I knew I didn't want a boring job. I knew I wanted to do something exciting, and I knew I wanted to travel the world, and I knew I wanted to make a difference. And I suddenly had to kind of go, right, there are other ways to do that. What are those ways? I discovered the youth development charity Rally International, which was a huge experience for me. I spent the next few months applying to a biology degree with an idea that I'd finish my biology degree and transfer into medicine and still go down that path. But that year was kind of like an enforced gap year that I never knew I'd have. And I was actually really excited for it. I was really excited to do things that other people weren't doing and have that independence and go out and do stuff. And Rally was a huge, huge part of my life. I volunteered with them in Malaysia and Borneo. I went out in 2004, and I spent 3 months working on conservation and environment and community projects out there, meeting a whole host of people I never would have worked with or met or talked to before, and then ended up kind of forming a group of people who I traveled with around Southeast Asia. Came back 6 months later, and I had some incredible life experiences and lots of kind of personal growth from that journey as well. Just a huge believer that travel opens up so much for you in a way that kind of just seeing pictures or reading doesn't. Not that I'm not a fan of reading, as you well know, but Librarian is another string to my bow that we'll talk about, I'm sure. And it was life-changing. It was really life-changing. And one of the key takeaways from that was not necessarily having to wait. I had this idea of, well, I'll do my A-levels, 18. I'll do my medical degree, 24. I'll do my 6 years in the Navy, 30. Then, depending on where I am, maybe I'll start taking those skills elsewhere to give back. And actually, I was like, no, I'm 19. I don't have a degree. I don't have any kind of work experience as such, but I can still make a difference and give back. And I can still travel the world, and I can still do all these things. And that idea that there's lots of different ways you can achieve the same thing has stuck with me for ages.
This is fascinating, and I really want to unpack it. What I'm hearing you say is there were 2 conflicting voices in your head. One was, this is the path. We do this, we do this, we do this, we do this. And another was reframing every single time something you tried didn't work out. Looking back, can you see which voice was your voice, which voice was society's and the influences around you? And what would you say to somebody who is going through this right now, and or knows somebody who's going through this right now, as a way to navigate those tricky waters?
Oh, that's a great question. So to answer the question about the voice, I think the other thing which has stuck with me over many years, for better or worse, is I'm particularly stubborn. Even that path that I chose that was fairly linear, there was plenty of voices around me, friends and family, who were like, well, 6 years to the military is a big deal. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? My dad, who was an NHS psychiatric nurse for, I think, 30 odd years, was like, you realise if you take a career in medicine, you use not much sleep, everything depends on you. You make a mistake and that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And I was like, no, Dad, it's fine. I'm going to do it because this is what I want to do. And very kind of headstrong. I feel like those voices were always mine. Certainly there are influences from things around you. I'm sure, you kind of look at other people. And I grew up in a council estate in Romford. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be nice to just have a little bit more money? It would be nice to just have a bit more comfort, but also wouldn't be nice to do some really cool and exciting things as well. For other people, this is a really interesting one because I get asked this a lot. I mentor young care leavers and various other people, and generally as well, if you're in my field, people often just reach out via various mediums. And I'm very happy to chat with them. And I come back to this idea of there's more than one way to achieve your goal. You also do need to be very clear about what that goal is and why, which was something I was missing. And I had to learn that the hard way. But I am one of those privileged people. When I look back on my childhood, I think about my parents never pushed me in any direction. The passions and the things that I had were mine, and it frustrated me at times. I was a mad keen musician. I'm a musician now, and my parents just weren't interested. And my other friends were like, oh yeah, my dad's teaching me guitar. It's taking me to this place to go and see this gig. And I had to do all those things by myself, which, as I said, frustrated me, but actually gave me a lot of independence. And it wasn't that they didn't appreciate it. They was just very much like, you have to go and find your own path. And that is huge. Having that kind of support network around you that says, go and do what you want to do, just don't come crying to us for money or whatever it might be, and own those decisions and that path that you take, which I think is rare. And I only appreciate it now, having children of my own, how rare that was. And like I say, it frustrated me at the beginning. And I look back on it, I go, actually, it gave me a lot of independence. And actually, I did have that support. It was just very quiet. It was in the background. And I remember coming back from traveling to Malaysia and all over Southeast Asia. And I arrived to lots of unconditional offers for university. And St Andrews was one of them. And I got the chance to potentially go to this university I really wanted to go to. Gorgeous place, very kind of classic university atmosphere. And having a very frank discussion with my dad saying, what do you think I should do? Because there's all these places that they want me to go to and stuff. And I'll never forget, he said to me, a practical choice here is if you stay in London, you'll be able to live at home, you'll save money. But also, if you go to St Andrews, what's going to happen with your band? And I suddenly thought, oh, you care about that? And he was like, yeah, that's your thing. You've been putting so much energy and effort into it and you're just going to walk away from it. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not. And I made the choice to stay at home, and I stayed with my parents for a long time. Again, talking about kind of society and pressures, I, who was considered very effortlessly academic at school, in my mid-20s, was living at home with my parents, working a job that was paying half what my friends were paying, chasing a dream, and had lots of noise around me saying, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm doing what's right for me, and I know it's right for me. Thank God so far that's worked out okay. The short answer to your question, I'm not sure what advice I could give because I'm very grateful for that support that was around me.
What would you say to somebody who didn't have a goal, they didn't have a why, they didn't know how to find it?
Oh, that's also a great question. And it's really interesting because I feel like, and I could be wrong, that everyone has one, they just haven't discovered it yet. Another happy intervention that's occurred in my life, and I think opportunities are always around the corner and you just don't necessarily know where they're going to come from. I spent 20 years in total working in public libraries and local authority roles. It was never my intention to spend that long in that role. But in that role, I met some incredible people. I met some interesting people. And I remember in my mid-20s being introduced to this idea of coaching. I'd never really heard of coaching beyond football coaching and sports coaching and rugby coaching. And it was on a management course that I had to compulsorily attend. And it was like, okay, that's another day I've got to go out and do something. And the person delivering it, a fantastic coach, her name's Ruth Morris, if you want to check her out, she's amazing, was talking about what coaching really was and what it was about. and it lit another spark in me that I never really knew I had. Had it not been for that encounter, again, life moving in tons of different directions. And I truly, truly believe in the value of this. I think the biggest thing you could do is get yourself a coach, whoever that might be, someone you resonate with, someone you're going to work with. It's deep work, it's personal work. And I think a lot of people go, well, I don't have a goal, so I don't need to get a coach yet. Actually, that's what they're good at. They help you really elicit some amazing goals.
What I'm hearing you say is that from a very young age, had a determination and a certainty around what you wanted to do, and you committed yourself to doing it. Then it's almost like you went all in on all of the things, were willing to see what would happen. And when it didn't work out the way maybe you'd planned it to work out, you pivoted very quickly onto the next thing. And it's only with time that we can look back and join up the dots. Hearing you tell your story, I'm joining up the dots. You didn't get into the university, you went out into the wider world, and that gave you experience, and that gave you a global perspective of life, and it gave you more information, more access to, oh, okay, now what do I want to do? And then you were able to come back and have that conversation with your family, with a perspective, and make your decisions for the next steps, which weren't the classical decisions that other people were making, but perhaps having this more global perspective enabled you to then see that bigger picture. Perhaps I'm just joining up dots that aren't there, but that's really what I'm hearing you say. So it was the motion that helped your story to keep unfolding.
Absolutely. And I think it's very easy to condense it and try and get that point across really quickly without pointing out the constant pitfalls, the mistakes that I have made, the lessons that I've learned, the outside pressures of all kinds of influences to stay true to that. And those come in various shapes and forms, which it's not just, oh, everyone's nagging at you to say, why don't you get a proper job? Or the other ways it could come is through health and other things that just come your way, tragedies and loss and all of that plays a factor as well. And yeah, I like that summary of pivoting, because actually there's so many things that I do, and people often say to me, but what is it you really want to do so you can give that stuff up? And I don't want to give that stuff up. I like doing that stuff. That's why I do it. And I worked really hard to get to the point where I'm doing things that I like doing, rather than kind of just trudging through the days and things and feeling very happy about those choices. And I think you have to take those risks because you only get one life, right? So you may as well try everything and see what sticks. And that idea of going out to the wider world in 2004 as well, pre kind of the internet being really ubiquitous, one of the sparks was I was going around Southeast Asia, musician, picking up instruments, talking to people, playing music with people and going, they're really good. They're much better than I am, but I live in London and I have resources that they don't have and I have opportunities that they don't have. And I think a realization suddenly of you've got it easier than a lot of people out there. So what you're going to do about it was a real kind of kick up the backside for me to kind of kick that drive into motion. As I said, I'm very, very lazy at school. To be honest, I'm still lazy every now and again in my life, more often than not very lazy, but still have systems and goals in place to kind of keep me on track.
It's almost like the perspective helped you to see your privilege, and within the privilege, it then helped you to review what it was that you wanted to do and why you wanted to do it. I want to now unpack two different things. One is around this phrase you've used repeatedly, lazy, and then the other is to talk about your trusting the process journey and how your career has unfolded from the library to the work that you're doing now. For the benefit of the listener, all the links to Marcus are in the show notes. He is such a fascinating person. You are going to want to go off and do some research. This man is a model. He is a hand model. His family are family models, as well as a TV presenter for the CBBC. All sorts of amazing things that we are going to come on to. But let's just come back to this lazy, because I truly, truly believe that this is a sentence that people attribute to an actual scientific process that goes on within certain people. And what I mean by this is it is my observation, having done time management training and run my business for over 10 years now, worked with a number of clients, that the people who describe themselves as lazy are not actually lazy. They are waiting to be activated by the things that matter. Because when I then speak to them about what they have achieved, it is incredible. So it sounds to me almost like you have the ability to reserve your energy and your attention and then tie it to the things that matter. Let's go into your career in the library and then the next step. So talk us through this. You come back from Southeast Asia, your peers, you have all these opportunities on the table, but you choose what you do. And where did that take you?
Yeah, so I actually started working in the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham Library Service when I was 17, so 2 years prior. And I had a role that doesn't exist anymore. And I wonder if it ever exists in society. I think these days you might call it a 0 hours contract, but that would be unfair to how that worked for the majority of us. So we had a pool of about 54 what we called sessional or casual library assistants. And the way it would work was every Monday you'd get a phone call from Kathy, lovely Kathy, who would organise us all, and she'd give you all, she'd keep track of who she was asking first each week, so everyone got first dibs at different times. 13 different libraries across the borough, lots of different shifts between 4 hours and 12 hours. What do you want to do? And you could choose to work a 40-hour week because the work was there, or take 6 months off to travel the world and come back and have a job again. And it was incredibly flexible. And we got paid for what we worked. We didn't get any holiday pay, we didn't get any sick pay. And in fact, in my life, the different roles and jobs that I didn't have holiday or sick pay until I was 27. So I'd never experienced that in my life. In my world, you didn't do the work, you didn't get paid. And that's very much my life now as a freelancer in all the work that I do. Yeah, I did that for a long time because it allowed me the freedom and flexibility to pursue what I really wanted to do. At the time I came back, I was at university, kind of 7 weeks a semester, going to work for the library service as and when I could fit that in, rehearsing with the band that I was playing with 3 times a week for 4 hours at a time. And, this was our big picture, our big dream was we'd take over the world, be the biggest band on the planet, release loads of records, tour loads of countries. And I'd say we didn't really get close, but we achieved a lot more than a lot of people would have necessarily done with the time and the resources that we had. Very privileged to have played all over the world in bands and had songs on the radio and all that kind of stuff. And basically we had I think if it was a business, you would say these were visions and values. This was just kind of, we decided between us, you never miss practice. It doesn't matter if it's someone's birthday or funeral or wedding, like it's your job. You're just not getting paid for it yet. And you never turn down a show. So we always played every gig that was offered to us, and obviously went and got gigs all over the country, and like I say, all over the world as well. And it's a pretty sparse existence. The money was not great, and most of the time you didn't get paid. And I remember heading off and cooking pasta at home and taking it in a little lunchbox to take on the road with me so that I could actually eat and not feel hungry in between shows and things. And the library job was really useful in that I could say, well, no, I've got a gig in Coventry, so I'm not working on Friday, I've got to travel down there. And that was useful, not just for university, like I say, it was useful for playing in bands and pursuing other things. I remember actually talking about the support that you have around you. All the time that I was there, whatever role I had, all of my colleagues were always so supportive of those aspirations and those dreams. So fast forward to kind of when I left the band thing behind, I got into modelling, signed to an agency, which again, learning curve. I got signed. My first audition was for a commercial for a lot of money, and I got booked and then released the day before the shoot. But I came out of that audition thinking that was pretty easy. Is this my life now? Is this the sort of thing that's going to go? I'm just going to turn up to audition and it's going to go really well, and they're going to book me and they're going to take me to loads of cool places and pay me lots of money. And anybody who knows anything about that industry, the majority of us don't do this full time. I'm lucky I do this full time now, but I did it kind of part time for 10, 12 years, something like that. And like I say, most people aren't doing this full time. And again, I chose a job that was really flexible and allowed me to try all those different things. I was an extra in film and TV for a long time as well. That was an interesting time. And that was why I stayed. And also when I stayed, because I was doing the same job and I was learning and growing in that job, I think it was inspiring to me because I was surrounded by media. If you're a librarian, you're surrounded by music, film, books and community. Really enjoyed working with people. I was doing something that was different to sitting in an office. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all. And I loved it and I was good at it and I excelled at it. So amongst all those other things that I was chasing, this career path was opening up before me as well. And eventually I did move into library management, and I managed libraries and children's centres for about 7 years before finally becoming full-time actor, model and musician. That was a huge part of my life, and the mentorship and the support I got there was massive as well.
By now, chronologically, we're coming up to 2018, 2019, 2020 in your story. And obviously, we know what happened in that year for a huge number of people. It was pivot central. What was Marcus's story in that time?
Again, I feel like my story, when people ask me about my story, I feel like it's so vastly different to everybody else's. Coming up to 2020, the year before, we had filmed series 1 of Andy and the Band. So we'd been commissioned by the BBC end of 18, and we filmed 2019. I'd quit my day job. I'd actually taken unpaid sabbatical leave from my day job at Public Library Service, handed over my buildings, handed over my staff, and again, very supportive structure of management. Said, you've done some great work here. We're sad to see you go, but this was what you always wanted to do and you should go for it. If it doesn't work out within a year, you've got a place. So I got to the end of 2019 and I thought, oh my God, I turned around to my wife and said, this is my job now. We're making a living from this. I am making a full-time living as a presenter, as a model, as a musician. I don't think I'm going back. This is mad. And I'd been there, as I say, for a very, very long time. So I've known a lot of those colleagues longer than I've had children, longer than I've known my wife. So I visit often. I pop into lots of the libraries still there and say hello to everyone and catch up with them and talk shop, because I did love my job so much. I popped in end of 2019 and said, so is it going okay? You coming back? And I said, you know what? I don't think I am. And then in February 2020, the whole world went into lockdown. Really horrific time for so many people. And again, I think where my story slightly differs is I was comfortable at home, and I talked about this a lot kind of in the communities that I worked in. And it really frustrated me that, okay, it was a bit difficult. My children were being homeschooled on 2 different iPads and 2 different classes at the same time that my wife was trying to work at the dining room table on a laptop. And I was like, well, the communities I worked in, they don't have the internet and they don't have an iPad for each child. And things are a lot worse out there for a lot of other people. And we had a lot of savings and we were financially okay. We were in a very, again, privileged position, but I also had tons of free time. And I come from a background of volunteering overseas and managing volunteers within the library service and managing volunteer-led services. So I got back in touch with my old work buddies and I said, hey, do you need volunteers? I'll help. Let me get out there. Let me do something. And they said, what we really need is a manager. All these new projects that didn't exist, all these new work streams, and we have no one to lead it and organise it. So I actually went back, it might have been late February, early March, started working with a team of people who had been displaced from their day-to-day work, whether that's because the gyms had closed or because their services were on hold. And we started managing the emergency food parcel deliveries for London Borough of Barking and Dagenham's. A team of about 6 to 10 of us. We were frontline workers. We were using our own cars, delivering parcels all over the borough to people that needed them, either because they were shielding or because they were in food poverty. We didn't really ask questions. We were building processes as we went, and we said, if someone needs food, we're going to get food to them. And really proud of the work that we did. That team, we put in a lot of effort, a lot of hours, and we had a kind of a personal goal as a team. Nobody goes longer than 24 hours. Once they've said they need food, we get food to them. So I was in and out of the house all hours of the day, going frontline to where we have like a central food hub, working with some incredible people. Again, scary times because I was going out and I didn't need to, and I was coming home and we were very strict about daddy gets changed at the door. You don't go and hug him, kiss him, you go straight into the bath. Then you can have some time with him. And did that for a very long time. Things started to open up slowly and things started to change, improve, if you want a better word, but the work wasn't done. The world didn't open up and everything was fine. We learned a lot about what was actually happening in our communities, how much poverty existed before COVID, what was really going on behind closed doors with domestic violence and housing and homelessness and debt. So I then started managing the beginnings of a team that was focused on that kind of work, front facing, coming into public buildings, dealing with these inquiries of incredibly special people, talented people who could have learned a lot more in the private sector, who wanted to stay and make a difference and were a real inspiration to work with. I worked with them for a long time, and amongst all of that, I was approached by some partners we had in the NHS. And the thing about local authority isn't there any money, so we're really keen on partnership work. We really want to work with communities, with authority, with the NHS, with whoever wants to partner with us, and also see what we can give into those services as well. So I was approached by our partners in the NHS saying we're going to start vaccinations. We're going to start a mass vaccination centre. We're going to run it out of Barking Theatre, again involving community. This was a huge community effort, and a really fantastic example of what happens when communities listen to each other, instead of government saying, well, we do it like this, and the volunteer sector saying, well, we don't trust the government, and people coming together. I ended up managing a volunteer cohort for that. So the recruitment, training, management day-to-day of the volunteers there, and then getting the other managers involved to kind of take that on. Hugely rewarding part of my career. We recruited 300 volunteers, and they were doing 6-hour shifts, 12 hours altogether each day. We were getting through 1,000 vaccinations a day, very efficiently as well. People weren't waiting and feeling uncomfortable. We obviously started with very vulnerable cohorts. We did special clinics for the homeless, special clinics for people who had neurodivergence issues and weren't, comfortable coming in at certain times. Really forward-thinking stuff, fantastic teamwork. One of my colleagues who's also in Andy in the band, Marcello Savoni, he came and volunteered as well. And it's weird because it was such a dark time, but I feel very fondly about what happened then and what we did, and watching people like Marcelo helping people who could speak Portuguese but couldn't speak English, and other colleagues being like, okay, well, we can help you, and people interpreting with sign and just using skills that they had that we never knew they had in a different way was fascinating for me. So that period, 2020 to 2022, was very much back in the thick of frontline service delivery, and it was very stressful at times, but so rewarding. Really important part of my life as well.
What I'm really hearing is a person who takes action step by step by step, day by day by day. Do you ever have self-doubt or imposter syndrome about, is this the right thing? Should I be doing this? What's the internal narrative that's fueling you? And where do you think this has come from?
Really good question. I think I'm very actively trying to think about what's happening in my head. We talked about reframing earlier. I'm a big believer in reframing those things that kind of happen. And there's definitely been parts of my life where imposter syndrome has been massive, particularly if I think about being an actor and a musician. They are jobs that I do, and I am known for, and I get paid for, and I walk into rooms with immensely talented actors and musicians who are either not as successful or maybe just haven't had the right breaks or opportunities, and I think, oh my gosh, how the hell did I get here? How has this happened? And I'm still trying to get over that. I think that's definitely, if I'm very honest, and I will be honest with you, that comes into my head a lot. At the same time, I am aware that makes me think, well, it's not just talent. When I'm mentoring people as well, I say to them, you do need to have your craft down. You do need to be able to have a level of ability, but actually what gets you success and what gets you kind of moving is, are you a nice person? Can I sit and have a chat with you at lunchtime? Are you going to turn up to work on time? Really, people hate to hear it. These are the things that drive that kind of success. So I still have a bit of imposter syndrome, I think, around my abilities. But also, I truly believe if you are the best person in the room at whatever it is you're doing, if you're the best actor or musician in the room, best presenter, you're in the wrong room. I want to learn wherever I am. I love that my job is so varied that I get to work with different directors, different actors, different producers every day. And I always learn something new, and I always take something on and go, okay, yeah, right, I could do this better. Or, oh, that's a nice way to do that. Right, okay. And I can see that. The blessing and the curse of my role is as well, is I can look back for eternity on series 1 of Andy and the Band, my first television series, and go, oh, that's not great. But I can also look at the end of series 3 and go, yeah, that was better. Good, we're growing.
I love this. So we're around about 2022. You have your Get Things Done with David Allen that you work on, and you are returning back to the work that you were doing before it all got put onto pause. Talk us through this and maybe what your perspective and relationship is like with time now.
Oh, gosh. So, yes, you mentioned Summit. I'm a certified Getting Things Done trainer and coach, and it's, again, a huge part of my life, which I discovered from working in public libraries. This book was doing the rounds with a lot of borrowers. And I also attended a management course where it was kind of touched upon, and there were other things that were going on. I was like, well, that actually looks quite interesting. And it really was life-changing. And I became a trainer and a coach because I basically got fed up of people saying, well, how are you managing to do all this stuff? And me kept going, look, you've got to read this book. You've got to read this book. So I became a trainer and a coach and got certified. And again, love that work. I often meet people who say to me, oh, is that like so you can pay your bills when you're not acting? And I'm like, well, I get paid. That's not what it's about. It's about sharing what's really really worked for me. And I honestly think the world will be a better place when we do think about our work a little bit more than we might do normally, but a little less than we're afraid to. And so I kind of went on that journey continually, still training and coaching people, which I love. As I said, coaching is a huge part of my personal journey as well. 2022, we started filming series 2 of Andy and the Band, which was fantastic in a way because so many TV shows just didn't get funded again. So many things fell by the wayside. So many people never went back to the work that they did. And we were really privileged to be recommissioned. But I think it would be remiss of me to say it wasn't hard. It was really hard. We were filming 20 episodes this time instead of 15. And my colleagues and I were in a COVID bubble to protect the production. So we basically were living and working with each other. We were in the red bubble, the 5 of us. So we weren't able to go out of an evening or have drinks with our crew and colleagues afterwards and things like that. And more importantly than anything, weren't able to see our families. So I left middle of May 2022 and I didn't see my wife and children in person again until the 3rd of August 2022. And that was, as a family and as someone who was out there kind of doing this work where every day for 12 hours a day you've got to be like, yeah, everything's amazing and I love life. That's really hard. And on the flip side of that, I'm doing a job that people would die for. I am on television filming the 2nd series of a TV show that I'm a lead character in, that the internal dialogue is, you should be really grateful, this is really awful, and those kind of things that are swimming around your head. So that was, I think in a way, 2022 is probably a more difficult year for me than 2020.
What I'm really hearing is personal development's played a really big part in your career over the years and the human that you are today. It helps you with how you do your work, it helps you with how you view things, it helps you with how you help others as well. I cannot believe the time has flown by and there's so many more questions I want to ask you. Tell us one thing you do with your time on a daily basis that you don't think other people do.
Particularly useful for anyone else who's a freelancer or self-employed, because I see so much, as you mentioned, personal development's a huge part of who I am. And I won't say my way is better than someone else's way, or you should do it like this, do it like that. I think you do have to find your own path and your own thing. One thing that I see time and again in all my social media feeds, which just doesn't resonate with me at all, is this idea of morning routines. This idea of I get up at 4:30 and then I go for a run and then I meditate and then I do, it all sounds really wonderful. It really does. It's not for me. I don't set an alarm unless it's, I've got to get up to deliver some training or I've got to get up for a shoot. You have to be on time to be on set with all the people that are relying on you. But on a kind of day when I'm just at home working on various work streams and my children are going to school, say, I'll naturally wake up kind of as we're getting up to get ready for the day. And my focus in the morning really is them. So we haven't really covered them. They've got a very rare skin condition called lamella ichthyosis, which requires lots of trips to the hospital, lots of medication, lots of morning routine stuff for them. So I focus on that. We get on with that. Then once they're off and out to school, I don't necessarily kind of go, right, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I have an idea of what I'd like to do in the day. And I have a GTD system that supports my thinking and that kind of stuff as well. But I'm not wed to this idea of, well, every Monday I must get up at 4:30 and I must work out. I'll work out a couple times a week, but I won't necessarily put it in my calendar. I'll just go, right, this is a good day to work out, or this is a good day to work on this, or it's a good day to work on that. And I think it's the blessing and the curse of the freelancer, because your time is more of your own. But that means you have to use it wisely and think about stuff. And I do have those systems, like I said. I teach GTD because I truly believe in it, that really support that thinking. But it's not me going, right, today I'm going to do this thing, or tomorrow I'm going to do this thing. And nothing is going to get in the way of that kind of stubborn thinking of, I must achieve these things at this particular time. I'll have a few things I want to do during the day. I want to practice my instrument. I want to do a bit of Duolingo, learning French. But I won't necessarily be prescribed to this idea of, well, I'm going to do it at this particular time in the day.
I love that. I really have to get this question in, but you've only got 60 seconds to answer it. Give us the macro level GTD.
In 60 seconds. Gosh. Okay. So getting things done, the art of stress-free productivity. We talk about you need to capture what has your attention, whether that's coming from messages from the outside world or stuff that's in your head, and get it out of your head. Clarify that. Make decisions about what that means to you. Are you committed to doing this? If you are, what are you going to do? What we say next action thinking. What is the next action? What will you actually do? You need to organize that in an appropriate place outside of your head, because your head's a terrible office. We don't want to rely on our brains to try and organize organise that thinking for us. We want to put it somewhere else where we can look at it appropriately. That's when we review those commitments so that when we choose to do things, we're happy that the choice we're making is the correct one.
In less than 60 seconds, fantastic. What have you got coming up in 2024 and beyond?
This week, I've just done another audition tape for a commercial, which hopefully I will book. You never know. The nature of my business, I'll just get on to the next one. That's fine. But maybe there'll be another commercial you might see me out in the wide world. Big project for the end of the year 2024. Andy and the Band Series 4 is in the pipeline. So when this comes out, I should be filming that next series, which is really exciting. Getting back together with my cast members and crew members that I absolutely adore, creating some fun and valuable kids television, very entertaining and informative stuff. That will take us through to the end of the year. I'm going away to Mauritius, where my dad's from, to celebrate my 40th birthday and our 10-year wedding anniversary. Very excited for family time. And then back the beginning of January to unpack and then get back on a plane to Australia for an Australian tour with the band and in the Odd Socks.
So exciting. Final question about time. What is your relationship like with it these days?
It would be ignorant of me to say, oh, I've got it all under control. And that's not what we're about when we talk about GTD in particular. We have this idea that, we talk about the productive experience and how if you're trying big and exciting things in your life, you're going to fall off the wagon, and that's fine. We just want to have the tools to get back on when we need to. In the most part, my experience with time is a lot better. I did actually write a blog about this. What's the big difference for me is when I was younger, I felt like I had to do everything all of the time, and I would never go to sleep, come back from work and chase my goals and things, which I think was useful at that time, probably not very healthy or sustainable. So I think my relationship now is a much more sustainable one. Actually, it is okay to spend 3 hours playing Mario Kart with my kids, or it's also okay to spend 2 hours on a particular project that I really want to get exactly right, or just turn off the computer and sit in the garden and stare at the sky for whatever amount of time. It's a much healthier one, and it changes, and recognizing that is perfectly fine as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm really hearing you say that you are conscious of your time and you actively decide what it is that you want to spend it on, and you're aware of the outcomes as a result of that. And it sounds like GTD helps you to have that overview and the dashboard as well. Final question. How can we find out more about you? Where do you hang out online? Where's the best place, and how can we connect?
Luckily, I've got a very unusual name. So if you Google Marcus Ramtohul, tons of things come up, from modelling websites through my agent and IMDb and things. But for me, where I kind of share what's going on with my work and life, Instagram, Marcus_Ramtohul, and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a huge place for me. I probably post on LinkedIn more than any other platform, and I like that I can post about all the aspects of my life there, about my work as a trainer and coach, but also my work in television and also my work in presenting and acting and modelling. Post there very regularly, so you can give us a follow on LinkedIn and see what I'm up to. I'm always on there.
And all the links for Marcus are in the show notes, as always. Marcus Ramtohul, thank you so much for your time today. It has been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay well, and remember, it's your time. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you loved what you heard, be sure to let me know by leaving a review so I can keep the good stuff coming. Come and say hi on Instagram at Success by Design Training, or visit my website successbydesigntraining.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search Abigail Barnes. Until next time, don't forget, you are amazing and it's your time.